T.J. Ford.
Few players in Texas Longhorn history have had the impact on the sport of basketball as did T.J. Ford. TJ's arrival on the 40 acres ushered in a new era of Texas basketball, and in just 2 seasons, he had returned the Longhorns to an honored place on the national basketball scene. As a freshman in 2002, he became the first freshman in NCAA history to lead the nation in assists and become a March Madness star by taking the Longhorns to the Sweet 16. But it would be his sophomore season that would etch TJ's name among basketball's immortals here at Texas. In that season, he led the Longhorns to their first Final Four appearance since 1947. He won the Naismith and Wooden Awards as the top player in all of college basketball. He was also named National Player of the Year by 5 different ratings groups and was a consensus first-team All-American as a sophomore. After leaving Texas, TJ turned professional following his sophomore season and was selected by the Milwaukee Bucks as the 8th overall pick in the 2003 NBA Draft. He went on to play 8 years in the NBA with the Bucks, the Toronto Raptors, the Indiana Pacers, and the San Antonio Spurs before retiring during the 2011-2012 season. Without a doubt, one of the most decorated basketball players in UT history, Ford's number 11 jersey was retired on February the 8th, 2004. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the guy who captured records, victories, and the hearts of all Longhorns, here is T.J. Ford.
All right. What he said, what do you got? All right. Fox Sports analyst Marquise Johnson said about TJ, that young man is so quick, he could turn off the lights and be in bed before the room got dark. Called an American Idol by the Dallas Morning News, T.J. Ford is an orchestra leader, said Mouthy Dick Vitale. I put Mouthy in there. Asked by media many times, how do you do it? TJ's answer, I don't really know. I do what I do. During several games in his career, TJ would go ask Coach Barnes, is it okay if I take over this game? Coach Barnes replied, be my guest. And it was usually successful, and when it was over, he'd run by Coach Barnes and pat him on the back and say, you're a heck of a coach. And in fact, it became so much that Coach Barnes said that every time TJ made a decision, Barnes, was a heck of a coach. Asked what he would remember about college when he went to the NBA, he said, signing with Texas. The University of Texas changed my life. It changed my family's life. It changed the entire community and the way it took basketball in this state to a national level. His royalism, he's quick as a hiccup.
Y'all gotta bear with me. Hopefully, I don't get too emotional here, because this honor, I wasn't expecting it. First, I want to thank the committee for honoring me with the other inductees for this honor, because this is something that will be part of my family's history and my history for the rest of my life. So, thank you. I want to thank the University of Texas. I want to thank my beautiful wife, my 3 kids, my mom, my dad, my friends, my family, my brother and sister, because I got everything my way, and they had to sacrifice a lot, especially, my sister. Everything was about me, the way my parents done things, the way that they got me to practice, got me to events. So luckily, it paid off, so we can celebrate, because, our life is totally different. So it's a lot of things that I'm trying to get it together that I'm going to say, because I've been disconnected with some people sometimes, and it's some things that I'm going to say that people never heard me say before. The first person before I start, I'm gonna gather by saying I got one player here, Drew Gressett, that was on that team when we went to the Final Four. That was here for my 2 years, and Coach Todd Wright, that kept me healthy. He's probably the best strength and conditioning guy that I ever had because I didn't have any issues with my neck as I did when I got to the NBA. So, thank you for that as well. Just one person. I'm from a small town, Big Town, Texas, and man, my cousins and my friends, we would play Hoop It Up, Planet Hoops, those little 3-on-3 tournaments, and we came into Houston and we was beating a lot of older kids, and we was 10, 11 years old beating kids. I was 15, and it's a guy named Ron Lewis just drove down today from Arkansas, who he introduced me to AAU basketball. I didn't know what that was, and that's the beginning of what changed our life because he was a successful black man who was an entrepreneur who sacrificed his family time with his own kids to pick us up in what we would call a hoodoo car, which was a two-door that had maybe 6 or 7 people in the car. And he would drive all over town, and he would meet my mother because my mother was doing school at the time. And, he would take me to practice, he would feed me, and then he would drop me back off to my mom. And I used to have to wait till she was, done with class, and then we would drive 30 minutes, back to Baytown. So, I love you. That wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have seen talent in me when I was 8 years old. So we had a good run for 6 or 7 years, and we played on the best AAU team in Houston. And what people don't know is my whole life, I played with the best talent. And that's what made me better, because playing with good talent all the time, you have to learn how to sacrifice. You have to learn how to respect everybody's talent. You have to respect everybody's ability. You got to understand, when to be selfish, when not to be selfish. So part of my makeup was being around him for those years and seeing the world, because I never left out of Baytown, Texas, and he's the reason why. And that's a male figure. The other person that was important in this transition of my life was my mother. As a strong black woman, my mother seen a vision for me that I didn't see and I didn't notice because I didn't want to come here. This wasn't my first choice. My mama used some tactics that, that was pretty impressive, because every time I was at practice, every time I was in the gym, every time I was at school, every time we was traveling, somehow Texas was there. Rob Lanier was there more than my girlfriend or my best friend. And I never could figure out how this guy knew everything that was going on. I love my mom to death because I'm actually living that vision that she had of me coming to this university. So whatever she thought, she was right on the money, just like Roy said about his mother, and I love you for that, because that decision of me coming to the University of Texas affected and changed our entire life for the rest of our life, and as well as our nieces and nephews and our kids. So I love you for that. High school coach, Coach Courtney, who's here as well to my right. For some reason, people just don't listen when I tell them that's my relative. Like, I grew up with him. He knew everything about me. So when I got to high school, that tough love, that discipline, that familiarity of him knowing me as a kid, I respected everything that he said. And he wasn't an easy coach to play for. And I remember my freshman year, I felt like I was the stuff. He didn't put us on the freshman team. He put myself and a lot of my other high school teammates on the sophomore team as freshmen, and we was dominating. I was having issues with the head coach at the time, and that was part of my anger management, that at that time they was sitting me out. They wouldn't let me play in games. I couldn't control the coach. I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And the moment that helped me in my life was the point that the last 5 games of the season, our varsity team, they could not make the playoffs. And as you know, I got a good friend, a best friend of mine, Daniel Ewan, that went to Duke University, and we're actually the first 2 teammates to make the McDonald's All-American game together. And he moved him up to varsity the last 5 games of the season. And he didn't put me on that. No, actually, I missed the part. During Christmas holidays, he played in a big-time tournament, and he didn't move me up. He left me down. So I was kind of ticked off. So the last 5 games of the season, the school, we couldn't make the playoffs, and he finally moved both of us up, and we went 4-1, but it was too late. And that kind of started the history of Willow Ridge, and we was able to go 72-1, and we won 2 state championships right here in Austin, Texas. The other most important person, besides those male figures, is my father as well, because my father taught me how to take care of myself, how to understand my body, you know, how not to trust people, allow people to earn your trust, and don't just openly give your heart to people. And I think that allowed me to protect myself from a lot of individuals. As these athletes here know, we have a lot of people coming at us a million different kind of ways, and they're pretty creative and slick with, you know, their motives and their intentions. But, you know, as a kid, I remember we used to record the video game, not the video games, but videotape the games, and we used to come back home and we used to actually study those tapes. So, you know, at an early age, I was understanding what every guy on my team's strength was, and we would rewind and fast forward and rewind and fast forward until, you know, I actually saw what he was talking about, or I picked up some things on my own. So, you know, I was able to understand my game and what I bring to the table at an early age. And I think with that process, I think that helped me be a great basketball player, because I studied those positions. I studied those motions of other athletes my entire life. So it was easy for me to dissect the game. The hardest part, what people don't understand, is how much work it takes to describe what you see in your vision to others. And fortunate enough, I was able to come to the University of Texas with guys that wanted to learn. They wanted to get to the next level. And these guys opened their arms up to a guy that everybody said would change the culture of UT basketball. That's not easy. That was very, very stressful, knowing that they are playing a season and I'm still in high school, and this paper is being written and people are saying that I am the best thing that ever happened to Texas. So for me, I had to make sure that these guys understood that I was humble. I wasn't coming in here like I was better than them. So everything that I accomplished in high school, I threw it out of the window, and I told these guys by my actions that I'm gonna start over and I'm gonna do everything that those guys do. I didn't do anything to set myself far apart from those guys. And I remember the most important reason I got to University of Texas, I remember Coach Barnes came to Willow Ridge High School. They pulled me out of lunch. We put 2 chairs right at the entry door, just me and him. We looked each other eye to eye. And out of everybody that recruited me, I remember talking to him for an hour, and we looked each other in the face. And I believed everything he said, because my dad told me, if a man can look you in your eyes, he's telling you the truth. So I decided to come to the University of Texas, because he told me that my life would be better than I ever imagined. And he was right. He said it would be cool to play at the University of Texas, and you would be the reason why it's cool. And I took that challenge. I decided to commit to the University of Texas, but it almost went bad, because my first tour day of practice, I was playing against a guy named Freddie Williams. If y'all don't know Freddie Williams, he was similar to Jammer with Roy. Couldn't move. He was strong. He was just a defensive guy. It was very aggravating. He would not let me move. I couldn't do none of the things I did in high school. This guy made me feel like I was nothing. He felt like I couldn't even play. And I remember after practice, me and Coach walked on the other side of the gym, and we sat down. And he pulled out his cell phone, and he called my dad. And he put my dad on the phone. I told my dad, I'm ready to come home. This is too hard. I can't do it. And my Dad said, son, that's not an option. Coach is all yours. He's your father now. So, how is he playing you? And this is what created TJ Ford. And I never told my dad this story. He said these words: don't let him touch you. And from there on, I used my speed on everybody. And that's what took me to the next level. In that next practice is when I dominated practice, and I felt good enough to roll the ball to Coach Barnes and tell him I'm done. Thank you.